The empowerment of Formula One's next big engineering talent begins at primary school level, and thus the Sifiso Learning Group is implementing the STEM racing program into South African schools. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Lights Out. I'm Irene Marie van der Walt, and today we have a look at a chat I had with Dr. Sizwe Nxasana of the Sifiso Learning Group about the introduction and the implementation of this program in South Africa. A little bit of history on the STEM racing program. It was formerly known as F1 in schools and had the objective of empowering and creating and honing the next engineering talents for Formula One. Now called STEM racing, it is implemented in South Africa under the name STEM Racing South Africa. Then we also have a quick look at the Grand Prix preview for Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium over the weekend, so stay tuned, we'll be right back after this.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
We are all the way in Joburg in Ilovo with Dr. Sizwe Nxasana. Did I say it correctly? Almost correctly. Yeah. Okay. So tell me, Irene. Yes. Okay. So tell me a little bit about STEM Racing South Africa. You've just mentioned this is your first year expanding into South Africa. Why expand into South Africa in the first place? Was it important to have this?
For starters, STEM Racing is global. It runs in about over 60 countries throughout the world. And introducing it in South Africa is particularly important in the context of developing skills and competencies of young people. Because as we know, the world is really moving, and the world of work has changed quite drastically over the last couple of years, and technology has a major impact on what happens to young people. And therefore, introducing STEM racing in the schools in South Africa is particularly important. It's very much aligned to the government's policy of building competencies and skills of the future for young people. It develops a lot of skills around critical thinking, problem solving, working together, because learners and students work together in building those miniature cars. But also it helps with communication, because when they're working in teams, they're working together. And it's particularly important because it introduces a lot of STEM concepts from a young age. So we're introducing STEM racing in primary schools, where the primary school children from around age 11 or otherwise grade 4, get to experience of working together, engineering, graphic design. They get to understand concepts such as computer-assisted design, computer-assisted engineering. And all those concepts are particularly important. Therefore, it definitely will encourage a lot of young people to, one, understand STEM, two, develop their own skills and competencies, and three, to be able to actually pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which are particularly important. And this country, South Africa, is facing a serious crisis when it comes to the number of young people at schools who are pursuing STEM. And therefore, this is a very exciting way of introducing STEM. With something, a sport that may have been seen as very exclusive, and we make it accessible. We are going to be working particularly in non-fee paying schools, which are catering for the poor, which is really important because very often initiatives such as this are only limited to schools that are in the top class, that cater for, families that can afford, that are able to pay a lot of money, private schools and that kind of thing. But introducing it in public schools that are at the lower income level is particularly important.
So you've now said, introducing STEM in a way that is exciting to young people. Obviously, STEM subjects have kind of been seen as the hard subjects, as I've got to go to physics again, I've got to go to math again. What do you think makes this concept so exciting? What do you think we can learn in teaching kids STEM in a classroom setting from the STEM racing setting?
Well, the most important part is because there's a lot of play integrated in STEM racing. So it looks like play, it looks like you have miniature vehicles, it looks like, children are sort of playing around, but actually in the process of the playing, you introduce a lot of these really important concepts. And I must say that it's not just STEM, in other words, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because when designing the car, it's got to look aesthetically pleasing. And therefore, there's arts, in terms of your design and so on.
Yeah.
So it introduces a lot of these features in a fine kind of way. There's competition, there's participation. So we find often, because we've been introducing coding and robotics and AI in schools over the last 3 years, and we find that even those students who probably are more reserved or maybe more quiet and maybe not expressing their views in the classroom, certainly when you introduce something like coding and robotics, or STEM racing in this case, suddenly those children find expression through creating miniature cars, as an example, to express themselves, and it builds their confidence and so on. So it's a really important initiative.
So tell me a little bit about how this works practically in a school. Is this an extra class that kids can take? Is it integrated into their class? Is it an after-school activity?
Yeah. So in our situation, we've taken the schools where we've already introduced artificial intelligence, coding, and robotics, which is completely integrated in the curriculum. It is in the timetable. It is used for assessments, for promotion purposes from one grade to the next. Those are the schools where you're introducing STEM racing because they already understand some of the basic concepts that are important in STEM racing. So this will be additive. Yes, it is not necessarily included in the curriculum by the Department of Education, Basic Education, but it's very complementary. And therefore, it will build on the skills and competencies that our students already have. Engineering, graphic design, and computer-assisted design, and all of these skills, which are particularly important.
So tell me a little bit about the rollout of this. This is still very new. Obviously, you're not going to go into every school in South Africa day one. How is that rollout plan looking for you guys?
So the rollout plan, as I indicated, we're taking schools that are already teaching coding and robotics. We're starting with primary schools and high schools, particularly in this province in Gauteng, as well as the Free State. So we're starting with 2 of the 9 provinces, and then we'll scale it from there.
So what is a school who wants to get involved with you guys, who's not currently on the rollout plan? How do they contact you and say, hey, we're also over here?
Well, as I said, obviously there's a lot of funding which is required to run, STEM racing in schools. So it also depends on the kind of funding that we're able to raise. But as I said, we've worked now over the last 2 years with 115 schools in South Africa. And a lot of them involve us as Sifiso Learning Group and Sifiso EdTech, building laboratories, building the infrastructure, providing connectivity in those schools, training teachers on how to actually do coding and robotics. And it's the same with STEM racing. So it's not just bringing STEM racing kits and tracks. It is a whole ecosystem, including devices, computers, tablets, and so on, that are required to actually make this work. So A school that may be interested, of course, if they have those resources already and are able to afford to pay for them, then obviously they can participate. But as I said, for us, inclusivity is really, really important, which is why we're taking schools that are often forgotten, that cater for children that come from very poor backgrounds.
One thing you've mentioned now that's interesting is the STEM racing kit.
Yes.
What's in that kit? What is that track?
Well, it's everything that you need to build a miniature car. So it will have the chassis, it will have a body, it will have some, obviously, technology to make it drive fast. And the faster you can actually make it to go, obviously the better for. So the learners and the teachers learn about aerodynamics, they learn about speed, they learn about physics concepts, and so on in the process, which is particularly important. So the number of components, that go into it.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about you. Why was it important to you to include STEM racing in schools?
Well, our whole philosophy as Sifiso Learning Group is to make a contribution in improving the quality of education in South Africa and the rest of Africa, actually. So this is very aligned to what we do. So we have created a whole ecosystem as a private institution that works with the public system. So in our group, we have schools. We own our own schools. We test a lot of things that we do and scale to the public system in our own schools called Future Nation Schools. We have an education technology company, which helps with integrating technology in learning and teaching in the classroom. We have a teacher training college called Nation Next College, which trains teachers across different domains from early childhood development all the way up to high school. So this is really very much aligned to what we do already as Sifiso Learning Group.
So tell me a little bit about, obviously you've got this entire learning group and you're trying to integrate STEM racing into schools now. What do you want children to say about this STEM racing program and about the Sifiso Learning Group, say 10, 15 years down the line? What would you want them to take out of it?
Well, the first thing is just to remember and have memories of having fun. Because schooling for a lot of children is not fun. So just introducing play in school and learning through play is particularly important and very effective way of learning. So students are not memorizing, they're not involved in rote learning, they're actually doing something really practical in the classroom, something they can relate to, something that comes from the real world, it's not theoretical, which is very, very important. And secondly, I want the children to go back and say, their days at school were fun. They worked with one another. They learned from one another. Yes, teachers were important and they were involved in the process. But the most important memories that all of us have are those teachers who took care of ourselves, those teachers who gave us advice, those teachers who told us that we matter. But also, often it's about memories of your friends. That's where you create friends and friendships. The friends that I have today are friends that I had from school, like 50 years ago. I still remember those friends. They're still my friends today, some of them. So those are the kind of memories that we want to live. But more importantly, it's opening avenues for young people and opening their eyes to things that they may not have thought about, to careers and opportunities that they never thought about. One of the things that we're not short of, particularly in the township and rural schools, is talent. There's plenty of talent. What we are short of is opportunity. So what this does, it presents opportunities for young people to say, okay, there's actually another world out there. There's a global world out there. So people are not just limited in their view to what is happening in their village or in their township. They'll be competing globally in Singapore or elsewhere as they participate in STEM racing.
In Formula One, maybe. So tell me a little bit, you're talking now about opportunities and giving kids opportunities, but oftentimes the people who create opportunities for those who are less fortunate have a certain amount of challenges in creating those opportunities. What are your challenges at present?
Well, challenges are, we prefer to look at it as opportunities for solving problems as opposed to
I like
challenges.
that. I like that.
So, schools in the townships and rural areas are overcrowded. They have limited resources. Teachers are often overwhelmed by just the lack of facilities and resources that they have. So just bringing solutions, through initiatives such as STEM Racing to those environments, actually it's amazing what it does. And they appreciate every little thing that you bring because, often they are forgotten. So it's important to be able to participate. That's why we were quite deliberate in choosing schools in the townships and rural areas that are often forgotten. And it's amazing what happens when you do that, because as I said earlier, you bring an opportunity and suddenly the eyes of these young people. One of the schools that we're working with in the Free State comes from a rural area. They've been all the way internationally competing on coding and robotics. And something that they never, teachers and learners and students never thought was even possible for them. But it's possible.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about what this wider network, obviously STEM Racing South Africa forms part of a global network of STEM Racing sort of subsidiaries, I guess you could call it. So tell me a little bit about what that network means to you here in South Africa.
Well, we as Sifiso Learning Group and through our schools, Future Nation Schools, are now part of a global network of problem and project-based learning schools where we adopt PBL as an approach to learning and teaching. In a few weeks from now, I'll be taking a group of teachers to Denmark. Next year, they're going to China and Singapore. The following year, they're going to America. Another set of teachers are going to the US. And these are all schools that are a network of PBL. So STEM Racing is particularly important in that context because it expands our network and our teachers and students get exposed to how learning and teaching is like in other parts of the world, which is particularly important for their own growth and development.
Okay, Doctor, thank you so much. Any last words before we leave?
Well, we are really honored as Sifiso Learning Group to be part of STEM Racing South Africa. It's an amazing initiative. It's a really important initiative, particularly for the benefit of our students and our teachers who will be exposed to something that is really amazing, that is global, that is exciting, that is playful, and at the same time, they're learning really important lessons when it comes to STEM, when it comes to graphic design, when it comes to creative arts, actually, which is really, really important. Thank you.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
there
you
have it. If you are in Gauteng or the Free State and you'd like to join the STEM Racing South Africa program, reach out to the Sifiso Learning Group. Okay, dis amper weer sulke tyd. Dis amper tyd vir Kletskompas en 'n heel nuwe tyd geleef ook nog.
Wonderlik, wonderlik. Ons moet die mense verwelkom, ons gaan luister, ons gaan praat, dit gaan lekker wees.
Ja, gesels met die mense wat jou raak, hulle stories hoor, ook stories vanuit die volgende dag se Republikein, so jy kry eers te kyk na die nuus wat jy môre in die koerant gaan kry. En dan nou natuurlik ons tydsverandering.
Ja, ons verwelkom julle na ons nuwe tydsgeleef 8uur. Ons sluit ons aan.
8uur die aand, maandag gesels jy sport en die res van die week gesels ek lekker oor mense se stories. Elke maandag tot donderdag om 8uur. With an impressive 41-meter climb at Radio and Eau Rouge and some of the fastest speeds on the Formula One calendar recorded down the Kemmel Straight, Spa-Francorchamps, since its appearance in the first Formula One season in 1950, has become a fan favorite. And this week, we go racing again in Belgium. Let's have a quick look at the track. So the first Grand Prix, like I mentioned, held in 1950, smack bam in the middle of the 1950 season. Circuit length being 7.004 kilometers for a lap, and thus the number of laps in the race on Sunday being 44. Your total race distance then brought to 308.052 kilometers. Lap record for Spa-Francorchamps set by Valtteri Bottas, 1 minute 46.2.8 6, that is in 2018. And then having a look at the history of this track, like I said, first Grand Prix in 1950. 58 Grand Prix have been held here. 61% of them since 1993 were held with a safety car or had a safety car appearance. The most wins by a driver here is Michael Schumacher with 6, Ayrton Senna second with 5, and Lewis Hamilton in third with another 5 wins. Then taking a look now at the most wins by a constructor. As you can see, Ferrari leading the pack there with 14 wins, McLaren hot on their heels with 13 wins, and Red Bull making a come up at number 3 with 6 wins to their name at Spa. Wins by grid position, 1, 2, 3 is your favorite order. Number 1 winning by quite some margin, your pole position by quite some margin with 21 wins from pole position, 15 wins from second position, and 8 wins from third. Your pit loss is about 18.5 seconds under normal green flag conditions, but under a safety car or a VSC that can go as low as about 11 seconds. Spa is also an undercut track like most tracks on the Formula One calendar due to the high speed corners. Obviously you reach quite high speeds if you look at the top of the map there right after the speed trap. On the Kemmel Straight you reach really high speeds in turns 7, 8, 9 known as Le Calme, a very sharp braking point there. Then going into the sweeping corner at turn 12 for Pouan, and then Blanchemont at corner 17, 18, sweeping sections right into the chicane there from Blanchemont. So sweeping sections, high speed sections, matched also with very sharp braking points. Make it very hard on your tires. That this track, actually, fun fact, could favor the overcut if it is cold, due to the fact that it then takes longer to heat up the tires. It could take up to a full lap to heat up your tires. And that is your Spa-Francorchamps preview. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Lights Out. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember that you can catch Lights Out every Friday at 5:30 on network television, DSTV 285 and GoTV 25 in Namibia, as well as oneup2.com. So until next week, from me, Irene Marie van der Walt, and the Lights Out team, drive it like you stole it.